Cool. Awesome. All right. Hopefully by now you guys are kind of familiar with these songs. I'm just going to go right into this one. You guys know what to do. Paul's letters establish the church. Christ's example inaugurated this work. Keeping it simple, gathering each week. That's the secret to the growth scene. In this winning our key to grow spontaneously. Fulfilling our roles in this church household. Here's your part, yeah. This is the way. This is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, yeah. This is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, yeah. Lives that proclaim the good news of Christ, truth and the way, given with glad hearts to sustain the work at home, abroad, around the world, always ready for those in need, encourage, admonish, and help in the weak. This is the way, this is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, Lord. This is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, Lord. God's truth and boldly defending it. Parousia in every one of us. Discipling nations as the Spirit works. Establishing leaders and growing the church. Gathering together as a family. Communing with Christ. We are worshiping. Yeah! This is the way. This is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, this is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, one more time. This is the way. This is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, Lord. This is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Love it. Love it. I'll wake you up too. All right. This song is about our body living, a church body living a healthy, functioning, unbroken body and being 100% in line with God's plans and purposes. Everybody owning a responsibility, not just leaders, but all the way down to the families and the kids, and everybody owning what it is to be a part of this family of families and making this body alive. When we gather, when we meet, bringing food and hearts to greet, when we come together with our Lord, let us come prepared, remembering together, we're responsible to grow and edify this body alive. Our purpose is to edify this body alive, to build each other up and sanctify. Each of us is responding to God's gifting and His calling. Every part of this body committed to this body alive. Bring a teaching, bring a song, exhortation, right or wrong. Ask a question, give an answer all in love. God has purposed in His plan each of us to understand what it is that we're responsible to bring this body alive. Our purpose is to edify this body alive, lift each other up and sanctify. Each of us is responding to God's gifting and His calling. Every part of this body committed to this body alive. Commitment to God's family as we see our intentional engagement and continued participation contributes to ensuring that we keep this body alive. Our purpose is to edify this body alive, to build each other up and sanctify. Each of us is responding to God's gifting and His calling. Every part of this body committed to this body alive. This body alive. Our purpose is to edify this body alive, to build each other up and sanctify. Each of us is responding to God's gifting and His calling. Every part of this body committed to this body alive. This body alive. Our purpose is to edify this body alive, to build each other up and sanctify. Each of us is responding to God's gifting and His calling. Every part of this body committed to this body alive. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. This next one here, All Over the World, is a song that I wrote about I wrote after the plight of India, the network that we are part of over there. Did you want to explain stuff?
No, I was, but
Okay.
You know what? You're doing a great job.
Okay. No, I want you to say something if you want to say something, though.
I think it's great. Isn't it great that we have songs written in the way of Christ and His apostles' paradigm and patterns? Isn't this wonderful? The whole church has been doing this, so go for it, Gabe.
Okay, so just explaining this song real quick. It's called All Over the World, and each one of the verses is about, it doesn't say it on here. It'll say it on the sheet music. But the first verse is India's network of churches. It's coming from their perspective. And the second verse is China's network of churches is coming from their perspective. And then the third verse is this church network here in Ames, our perspective. And what was going on there was India was suffering, not having enough oxygen. It was during COVID, and they have literally piles of bodies that they're burning, and it's just it's apocalyptic there. It was the word that was being used. It's crazy. And at that point, China hadn't had any connection, any contact with the India network. But they heard the need, and they were quick. They were like, what can we do? Do we need to raise money? Do we need to, buy supplies, send it over? What are we going to do? These are our brothers and sisters over here that are hurting. And it was just such an incredible picture of the global family. It inspired me to write these words from these different perspectives. So first one's India, second verse is China, and then the third verse is us here. And it's just different perspectives of the same words, and hopefully that kind of comes across here. So. Sharing, and you see our need, united in purpose and in spirit. You are crying, and we are listening. You are hurting, and we feel your pain. You are sharing, and we see your need. United in purpose and in spirit. This is the body. This is the church. This is our family of families all over the world. This is the body. This is the church. This is our family of families all over the world. They were crying, and we were listening. They were hurting, and we felt their pain. They were sharing, and we saw their need. United in purpose and in spirit. This is the body. This is the church. This is our family of families all over the world. This is the body. This is the church. This is our family of families all over the world. They will be heard. We are listening. They will be heard. We are shaping. You will be heard. We are equipping. You will be heard. We are uniting. Cause we are listening. They will be heard. Cause we are shaping. You will be heard. Cause we are equipping. You will be heard. We are uniting. We are uniting. This is the body. families all over the world. This is the body. This is the church. This is our family of families all over the world. Oh, this is the body. This is the church. This is our family of families all over the world. Oh, this is the body. This is the church. This is our family of families all over the world. There you go.
Okay, there it is. We talked about packets of music for everybody. We have 50 packets of the songs with lyrics that are back there. They're the first two stacks on the table back there. At some point, we're not going to get up and do this while these guys are doing this, but that's where they're going to be right now. There are 20 that just have the chords. They're in the single pile by themselves. Take just what you need for right now. If you need more than that, you should come see me. I'm James Riley. We're going to get some more printed at some point while you guys are still here if we can do that. But we wanted to at least get some of them out. So take the minimum you need at this time. But if you need more, come talk to me because we'll get another run going, and I just want to know what we have to print. So that's what we've got. So we know you're excited. We'll do this. Give it over to you, Michael.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. That last song, I feel like the depth, the context and depth of it is so rich. And out of Gabe's heart, out of our church's heart, out of Thinegren, do you want to say just a quick word about that song? And you want to give the microphone to Thinegren and tell us the context of when that was written, what was going on, Thinegren?
When Jeff was leading all the Indian leaders, the top level leaders of encyclical, and that was during the peak, the second wave of COVID, and many were dying in our churches, and there is no food for the people because of the lockdown. Then we didn't want to listen to Jeff. We told them, Jeff, please stop, and we are grieving. And quickly Jeff's turn of 2 Corinthians started talking about the struggles without and then the fear within. Then everyone started sharing the problem, the issues, and the death. And I told one, it's from my side, many I was sharing my side, that within the 60 kilometers, there are 50 pastors died. One pastor gave burial to 40 pastors. Then many churches are now no leaders, and people are going hungry. Then Jeff ministered to us, and that was really a good time. We are being shepherded. Then quickly, I think that he went to, he was leading the same kind of things to the Chinese leaders, and he shared just like this. We didn't expect anything from Bill they are going to do, because we know very well that Bill cannot do that much. But the Spirit of the Lord working that way, then naturally, he shared with the Chinese leader, and he narrated that what happened. Immediately the Chinese leaders talked to one another, and unanimously they told that the Chinese is going to help us. That was the greatest joy for us, and all the leaders under the leadership of Chadwick, we made a 5-member team. Then what is the need we got from the leaders? Then we gave a kind of a budget. And I thank the Lord that we have never ever thought this much would be coming to India. And thousands and thousands, I could calculate there's more than 20,000 families were blessed. And we put the criteria who have to be distributed and where it to go. The channel was very clearly arranged, and the distribution forms and things were done, and it went flawless. And we thank you so much for that. And the team worked in the grassroots level. This has, I can silence to all the Western, the institutions or NGOs, that the church network can do better job and to the needy people. Yeah, still we are, every places we go, people are referring back and forth. Then sometimes they are bringing me up. This is a person who sent the money. I told them, I'm not me. And some people we are scolding or we are blaming for this COVID. They are sending the money for us. And yeah, that's amazing. This quite natural. The Spirit of the Lord worked. And the distribution was very genuine. And yeah, this break all the Western paradigm. Yep. And immediately some of our leaders told, when the Chinese leaders are helping us, why can't we help in other areas even poorer than our country? So that was immediate response from our leaders. Yep.
Excellent. It was a deep, it was a deeply emotional time for all of us, all around the world. So the context of that song is amazing. Today, and in particular in this session right here, we're going to be talking from an apostolic shaping point of view. Yesterday, we were kind of flying like this in a crow's nest on the top of a ship, looking out and doing an apostolic view. And so we talked about paradigms, we talked about three curves. There's this big macro global things about how do sets of patterns move amongst peoples, how are they not comparable, completely incommensurate from one to the other. We talked about then strategies in order to move those patterns and those paradigms back into our world. Today and this morning, what we're going to talk about is what we would call apostolic shaping, molding, forming things. These are just big, broad terms. So think of, now we have to provide shape to these patterns. So what we are starting with is we have a recorded video from Walter Kaiser, who you'll hear some of the context, and Jeff and I will provide more of the context as we're going to just look at this video. It's about 17 minutes long. It's ZQ, Ezekiel is right there in the back, who is from Columbia University and a teacher of CAFUS school there, right? And he's in the interview as well as with Jeff. And Walter Kaiser in the 1970s, Jeff, let's give a little bit of context to it before we show the video. Because this is about the theological encyclopedia. And you're thinking to yourself, what? Why is that important? Well, when you're providing shape to a set of patterns of getting back to what you see in the New Testament, you have to think about what a person should learn and in what order should they learn it. Why can we go to Sunday school for 40 years and still not have the basic understanding of how to read what the author is talking about in the text? How can that happen? How can that be? That's because we have to rethink the theological encyclopedia, what a person learns and in what order do they learn it. How did the leaders of the early church and the apostles in their letters, how did they say that they needed to learn and understand and grow roots in that gospel teaching? And that's what Walter Kaiser really helped shed light on. We have a paper here from him. Where is it? Somewhere. I'll pull it up.
Here, I got one here.
I have it electronically, I know. So Jeff, let's give him a little context on Walter Kaiser and a little relationship that happened before we play the video.
Okay, part of the context with ZQ is that we're using his interview of the two of us as also a defense in light of some who are not happy with some country that we're working in that is responding on a very large scale. And ZQ is one of the most, probably one of the most respected almost of the theologians that are in, Chinese theologians in the U.S. And he and I have been together with several families more than once. And man, it's so frustrating not to be able to talk.
Everybody knows. Keep going.
And at any rate, so what'd you ask me?
I asked you, what do they need to know about Walter Kaiser before they watch this video? Like, for example, Walter Kaiser was...
For example, is like, since I'm so slow at perceiving, maybe an example
You're perceptive to that.
Maybe an example would help me.
For example, I'm handing it over to you.
Yeah, but you didn't give me the example.
Because you started talking. I did kind of forget the example now, though. But Jeff, here's
You
a clue.
You forgot the example. I'm winning this one. Okay, I'll be.
Let me start with this. This will set y'all on fire. Jeff barely graduated high school.
I was in the upper half.
Of the bottom third.
2.7. 2.7.
And Jeff was told by the leaders in his life when he was 18 years old, should he go to a school or should he learn in a ministry apprenticeship program? And his long story, a sordid story, but he learned in a ministry apprenticeship program. He didn't go to college. Jeff has no actually he does have one certificate which I found. I have a picture of it. I will show it to you later. From the ministry apprenticeship program in the 70s. But what Jeff did was he went to different places, one of which was to Walter Kaiser's place. And where was Walter Kaiser at that
Trinity.
point? At Trinity.
Ted's.
At Ted's, Theological Divinity School in Chicago. So, and would just knock on professors' doors and ask them questions and talk to them. Jeff wasn't paying any tuition. You know, the whole system is you pay tuition, you go to class, you sit there, you take tests, you get a piece of paper after 4 years, then you go put your resume out there and you get a job. For whatever reason, in the ministry apprenticeship program, Jeff didn't do that. He just went to colleges and started knocking on a professor's door and says, I'd like to talk to you. And what developed was this relationship with this man and Ted Ward, but we're focusing right now on Walter Kaiser. And Walter Kaiser, this isn't about Walter and Jeff. This is about what the Spirit, for all of us, what the Spirit was doing in those days about resurrecting or recovering or clearing the fog out from the hermeneutics and the biblical theology and the author's intent. Those are three big things which we'll unpack a little bit more, that this man helped with over a period of decades. He wrote a paper at a conference for us, which I'll read the beginning paragraph and last paragraph, which are prophetic 50 years later. So again, if you think of yesterday, you have to think of this as one conversation that's been happening. This is one conversation that the Spirit of God is putting back into our world. And so we're trying to give you a glimpse of how, what people should study and what should a person study and what order should they study it in, the Theological Encyclopedia. For example. Anything you want to add to that?
So what do you want me to do?
Well, nothing now.
Yeah, I think you wanted me to do what you just did.
I think I was waiting for you to do what I just did, and I got tired of waiting.
So you want me to evaluate it?
No, I think let's play the video.
Yeah, let's do
Okay,
that.
we'll play the
Before we
video.
get into bigger mess.
Jeff, let me tell you this though. If you get a sense in the video that we need to pause it to explain something, then let's just yell pause, and we'll pause it.
Yeah, let me just tell one other thing about Kaiser, though.
Yeah.
Kaiser he's 90. This is, he just turned 90. And he's still going. He's got a publishing agenda and a writing agenda that he's paused to talk with me. But Kaiser was head of the Old Testament department at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. And he has written 90 books. And he's considered by some to be the father of Old Testament theology, moving from the systematics to Old Testament. Then later, we'll talk about it a bit, but later he was invited to become president of Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, which umbrellaed our first DMin before we were accredited. There's a man named Brevert's Child's Introduction to the Old Testament as Scripture at Yale that kind of really started the move towards Old Testament theology, but in evangelical circles, Kaiser pioneered it. So it's he's up there if you're looking for prestige, not prestige, if you're looking for really high accomplishment in in biblical theology. It's the top of the mountain, and he really shaped it as a whole. So, and you're going to see his graciousness here, which is just as gracious as the first time I knocked on his door. The second time I was there. See, the thing is, if you're educated like I am, you can move faster than in the schooling. But the problem is you don't know how to pronounce words. And when you're in front of somebody like Kaiser, you don't want to make a mistake. So he was talking about lines of continuity between the Old and New Testament, which is built into it. And I said, Dr. Kaiser, could you tell me one more time about the lines of continuity? And he looks at me and he goes, continuity. Just real soft, like you'll see him talk. So this will be fun. This is down to 17 minutes, but it was an hour and 45 minutes. And Michael went through it, I think, 4 times to get the 17 minutes. In fact, he texted me late at night, not in a good mood about the fact that he's going through it the 3rd time, and I didn't mark the thing right, but I didn't know how to mark it. I told you I probably wouldn't get it right.
I was complaining.
Okay, enough.
All right, let's play the video. We'll let you know if we need to stop it partway through.
I'm gonna sit down there.
Yeah, okay.
Ever since 1976, when I first came into your office, you didn't have any time then, but you gave it to me. And so you don't have any time now, 48 years later from when I first came into your office.
Well, I try to keep busy.
Okay.
The build system or the Antioch system has been expanded all over the world, especially in the majority world. And Jeff believes that the majority world or the church network in those areas are more like comparable or similar to the early church movement. In other words, it's very similar to the situation in the book of Acts. So now you are the famous Old Testament professor. So we want to invite you to serve as a gatekeeper for the Christians in the majority world. So I hope that you will be objective or even a little critical for the spiritual well-being of Christians in those areas. So the first question is, Can you tell us briefly how you came to know Jeff and how you mentored him back then?
Well, it goes back a good ways. And for a man who's getting older, probably some of the memory isn't all there. But as I recall, I was in my office and someone was walking down the hall, which we often had at Trinity. It was a new school, and we were just putting together the remnants of a theological institution, which had a long history, but this was an all new advance we were taking, as they had just called Kenneth Kaiser to be the dean of that situation. So what turned out to be Jeff knocked on the doors, I recall, and he said, "Can I come in? Can I have a little bit of your time?" Well, as a Christian sort of thing, I said, "Yes." And I had no idea who he was, what he was doing, but you always try to be helpful. And so he came in, got a chair, he sat down, and began asking me all sorts of questions. And I couldn't figure this all out. Who was this guy? What was he trying to do? And pretty soon our discussion got off into biblical matters. And of course, I love that kind of conversation. And that's what then proceeded from that point on. And then I think each year in June, I believe it was, he would ask ahead of time, "Can I come and have one whole day of your time?" And then he would begin to ask me, and particularly since I was doing work in biblical theology, it centered an awful lot on biblical theology.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you. So, Antioch training system.
Well, I know it in pieces, I must tell you, and I have followed it particularly in its beginning times, not as much, I would say, in the last 20 years. So I really need a lot of catch up on what has been going on. But those early years, I followed him very, very closely and urged him to stress the training in exposition of the Word of God and authors, intentionality, the biblical author who stood in the counsel of God. That was the person we were to really follow. And all teaching and preaching should be after the likelihood of his work. And I stressed too the promised plan of God, by which I took the 4 promises that God gave to Eve in Genesis 3:15, the promises he gave to Abraham, and a covenant in Genesis 12 and 15, and the promises given to David in Second Samuel 7, and then the new covenant in Jeremiah 31. And I said, if you get those high points, you can really see the plan which focused on one people. God chose Israel, and all through the 66 books into the book of Revelation, all the way, it is God saying, I'm going to make my whole plan for salvation and for the conquest of good over against evil to be centered in my promise I've given to Israel. So I sort of left that track with him pretty much as a central theme.
Those questions.
Okay.
Okay, now the question I want to hope it's not a curveball that I want to throw to you is that why do you think the way of Christ and his apostles is important to the contemporary theological education, and why the current Western paradigm of theological education is not working?
Well, actually, some of those things, when I first came to your office the first time, Dr. Kaiser, was 1976. And like you said, I just knocked, but then you gave me major time each year. But the next time I was there, what you did was you introduced me to Edward Farley, and the fact that we needed a whole new theological encyclopedia. And I actually have, I'm going to put this on the screen. I actually have this chart.
I got it.
This chart you drew for me actually in 1976. This was the first thing you did with me. And where you introduced me to Farley and you said, we fragmented our curricula today and we need to integrate it again. Exegetical studies, biblical studies, theological ethical studies, and then historical studies with the authoritative scriptures at the center and the Christian and the Spirit. And then you explained to me also the author's intention and how we needed the only way we could do exegetical and biblical studies, which was biblical theology. The only way we could do that is if we went with the author's intent and exposited the books, and then we did biblical theology before systematizing it, theological studies, and then we check it with history. All right. When you showed me that chart, my whole world changed. At that point, I had been in an apprenticeship program in a church, but it was a Dallas grad who had studied under Ray Stedman, and he crammed Dallas Seminary into me for 3 years, which was very, very useful foundation in the context of the church, even Greek and Hebrew. But I didn't like the fragmentation. I didn't know any answer to it at all. But your name kept coming up again and again because of biblical theology, which is why I knocked on your door. And then when you showed me this chart, everything changed.
Good. Jeff, my last question for you is that you obviously discovered or observed a lot of similarities between the New Testament church, the Apostolic Church, and the current, the contemporary church networks in the majority world. And you advocate a church-based mission, church-based disciple training, and a church-based theological education. So can you tell us briefly, what do you mean by that? What is the role of the church in these training, these ministries?
My argument is let's go back and look at the apostolic teaching, make sure we really understand in the context of the strategy that's laid out in Acts. Let's really understand Paul's teaching, Peter's the Petrine Circle, Peter and the ones around him, and the apostolic teaching of John. In Israel now.
Can you imagine the whole world protesting against Israel? For what reason? The reason they hate God.
Yeah. I've got two remaining questions. By the way, if you recognize this, This is your manuscript. You had two of them. I talked you out of it. This is Toward an Old Testament Ethic, 1982. And I've got Toward an Old Testament Theology that you gave me too.
You can put it to auction.
I shouldn't show it to you. You probably want it back.
It's too late.
Two final questions, and why don't you just stay on, ZQ, and because this whole thing will work. Because I want you to do a short address to our conference. But before that, I want to ask one question. I don't know if you remember, but you did other things for us too. Not only did you give a paper at the conference, but you got me into the two inerrancy summits. I mean, the inerrancy one and the hermeneutic one.
Oh, yeah, good.
And I set up a lunch. I wasn't always sensitive, but I set up a long lunch with you and Dr. Walkie and Elliot Johnson and James Montgomery Boyce. I don't know if you remember that. And
yeah, I do.
And that's where I learned Walkie and his chessboard and why he could change the rules, but you and Elliot were arguing for the intent. That's another one that shaped me tremendously. But the encyclopedia is what rearranged everything. But you also, there was one other thing I wanted to say too. You also, and RD Min, because we're fully accredited now, but RD Min, before we were accredited in 204 to 206, you and Ted Ward got that thing approved at Gordon Conwell, and you committed to be one of the two teachers and Ward the other one. Yeah. And that gave us a whole foundation to shape our DMin. And you also taught, even though you had a stroke, at that time. But you've done all that for us, and that laid the foundation. But one of my questions is, why did you say yes? In other words, I just knocked on your door, and then I asked every spring for a day, and then you did several of these other things. We didn't have any money. Why did you say yes all across those 30 years? I'm not looking for anything profound. That's somebody in your status and a young whippersnapper like me being over aggressive. Why did you say yes?
I think the Lord must have told me to say yes, because I try to listen to his promptings, and there you were, and it demanded a yes or no. And I looked at you and I said, yes. But no, added that, I never was of any climbing the stature thing of who's known and who's who. I came from very humble background, so I guess the Lord prepared me that was the same. He was in charge, not me, and when he sent someone, help them as much as you can. And I tried to.
That was a big commitment. And I also bribed you once. I don't know if you remember that, but you have a huge John Deere tractor collection.
Yeah.
And I brought you a John Deere to add to your collection.
I tell you, there's a follow-up to that story. Student came into my office one time, and he looked around the office, and I had those little models of John Deere on the windowsill, and they're all around. And he said, can I ask you a personal question? I said, yes. He said, why do you have those there? Well, I said, you promised not to tell? Yeah, he said, I won't tell. He said, why do you have them there? And I went over, I shut the door, and I tried to make it look as secret as possible. And I said, well, do you ever have a bad day? Yeah, he said, I do. I said, I do too. So I said, when I have a bad day, I get down on the floor, I get those tractors, and I play with them. And I said, it helps an awful lot. Oh, okay. He said, I won't tell anyone.
That's really good.
And may God bless you in the work in India and China, but may they only be samples of what you can do elsewhere.
I'm going to share something on the screen. But Jeff,
What's that?
what are you thinking after you see it now afresh?
Well,
Maybe don't show this screen until I'm ready. My bad.
You know, it's just amazing. I met with him first time in 1976. I was 24, and Jim, who had trained me, left after a couple years of starting the church up. Here in Ames, and he encouraged me to go to visit a number of professors in areas that I would be developing curriculum, and so I think there were 2 trips a year for 10 years, and probably had 20 professors who were advisors, and all of them that said yes were gracious. But I mean, he really made himself available. I imagine you're going to say something about that article, but
I'm going to show the paper.
that last line in there, just
Let's
Nancy
show it.
remembered the fact of his one of his challenges to me. But this was an article.
When was this written?
This was, I don't know. Where's Nancy? Did you get a date? I think it was it was our Phoenix conference, whenever that date was. Where's Don Johnson? He remembers everything that, but I don't know, probably 95, I would say. But I met with him from 76 to 2007, and he had the big reason for the big gap is writing our D-Min, and part of getting it in the door was, it was our D-Min, but you had to have a professor in the school that would commit. So both Kaiser and Ward committed to teaching during that week, or one of the week residencies for a couple days. And he just had a stroke and he retired in 2007, shortly after that. But he finishes this. This is an author's intent statement.
Here, let's read the beginning first and then read the end.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Oh, you got it up
Here's
there.
what he said, and you've heard us say, like yesterday, that about Christendom, its impact is over, and so some of that may be hard hitting, but all we're saying is in some senses, we're just telling you what other people have said. If you look at it this way, he says, as one of the spirituals put it, things have gone about as far as they can go. It would seem that we have arrived at about the same place in interpretive theory and practice for the scriptures of the Old and New Testaments. We have gone just about as far as things can go. Far from being without any or too few approaches for the interpretation of the Bible, biblical scholars and Christian laity are overloaded with a plethora of views on how they should interpret the Bible. And this is where we say you can go to Sunday school in a church for 40 years and not know the Bible much better than you did when you started. It's embedded in what he's saying here. A plethora of views of how they should interpret the Bible, the majority of which are potentially explosive enough to sink everything the evangelical movement has struggled so hard in this century to maintain in the matter of biblical authority, inspiration, and inerrancy. So he's saying there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that has potential to sink it and create its impact down and down and down further. And then, as Jeff was beginning to say, if we go to the very, very end of it, you want to read this paragraph?
No,
Jeff?
go ahead.
He's talking about the Antiochian tradition in here, which
I'm not sure you're going to be able to find it.
no, it seems I'm struggling. Hold on, I need to show one page, single page, and let's make it bigger so you can see it. Here's what he's talking about the Antiochian tradition that's needed, not the Carthaginian, which the Catholic faith ultimately came out of, or the Alexandrian, which is really where the Protestant traditions and paradigm came out of. But he's saying we need to go back to the Antiochian tradition. And he says a new reformation is actually needed in church-based hermeneutics. It awaits a generation that is willing to test it and prove it that those things that are good, those tried paths that have worked, and those new areas that still need to be worked out from the same thesis, but were not finished because of factors that kept the earlier church from finishing them. But now they, with our responsiveness to the Holy Spirit, can be made complete, and together as workers that do not need to be ashamed, we can steer a straight course up the channel of biblical relevancy.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal statement. Church-based. See, he delivered this at our conference, and the thesis of it was the single intent of Scripture was the practice of the Antiochian tradition. The Catholic tradition moved to law-based. The Alexandrian or the Carthaginian. The Alexandrian moved to multiple interpretations of Western Protestantism.
Which is why you end up with so
down
many
through the centuries. But the single intent of Scripture was the Antiochian tradition, which is why it shaped out of Acts and the New Testament authors the first 300 years of the early church. So for him to make that effort, do the paper, tie it with the Antiochian tradition, and give us a challenge like that at the end, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, we hope what you can see is how the Spirit was causing these conversations from the very beginning. And we've talked so much about author's intent, and think of yesterday, that as paradigms shift, there's a group of people who carry that singular conversation. It's a group of people that have it. It's very rare, but if that paradigmatic, that set of pattern conversation can happen over periods of decades, and that they can create a body of tools around those sets of patterns, then more generations can actually then have those same conversations. And so you can see God's fingerprints all over this, is what we're hoping you can understand. We're almost I think we're out of time. What time is it? Yep, we're just about out of time. Let's take a comment or two, a question or two, very briefly. Sean, you went yesterday, bro. Let's give someone else a chance, unless no one else raises it. Here, just give him the microphone.
Can we watch that whole interview somewhere?
There's only one. There's a challenge to that there's other information in there that is maybe. How about a maybe? A strong maybe.
And can we get that paper?
Oh yeah, you can get that paper for sure. There's some other sensitive information in it that I'm not sure we want out in the public. So, Rigo. Okay. You can talk to me afterwards if you want to watch the whole thing. Other questions? We need a question related to the content itself, or a comment.
Wait for the mic.
Give you the microphone there.
So my name's Art Waskey. Don took me through the Master of Ministry. What I find when I do small Bible studies and I use the first principles as everything that you defined in there, the people that come to the programs have never had an understanding of the continuity of the Bible. Been to the Sunday school classes, been to the conservative evangelical churches, but never had an understanding of the continuity, particularly of the church, until I take them through the first principles. So I'm totally in agreement with everything that you said and the value that it has in the church today.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. That was really good. Okay, let's take a break. We will come back and we are going to talk about mastering the scriptures, which is built around biblical theology, the author's intent, and the design, which is really important for what a person should learn and how should they learn it in order to be rooted in the faith. We'll see you in 15 or so minutes.